everybody, and welcome to The Discriminating Gamer, the board game review show that happens to know that Sandy the dog from Annie was a card-carrying communist. My name is Cody. Say, do you like that Battlelore 2nd Edition? Of course you do. You'd be foolish not to. Well, today we're going to take a look at two brand new army packs for Battlelore 2nd Edition, Terrors of the Mists and Heralds of the Dreadfall from Fantasy Flight Games. The Terrors of the Mists and Heralds of the Dreadfall army packs from Fantasy Flight Games bring an entirely new faction to your game of Battlelore 2nd Edition. They introduce the Walker of the Undying. Essentially, these are undead ghouls and goblins and weird, funky, wild, dead creatures that are going to be able to fight either of the two existing factions from the base game and the army pack expansions for Battlelore 2nd Edition. Now, each of these two army packs feature a number of armies that you can use to field in your games of Battlelore 2nd Edition, but they also come with new cards, new terrain, and some other fun and kooky surprises along the way. First of all, the Terrors of the Mists army pack features 9 Remnants, 9 Necromancers, 6 Barghists, 12 Bone Horrors, and the big baddie for this set, 1 Banshee. Terrors of the Mists also includes the Graveyard Tile. Now, the Graveyard Tile is very cool because essentially what happens here is you can place the tile like an army unit. You know, you pay your cost when you're placing or when you're fielding your armies. You can place these graveyards. And what they do is at some point during the game, when one of your units is eliminated, you can pay a lore to essentially remove the graveyard from the game, but you get the unit back full strength without any of the penalties it may have had on it when it died. So it kind of plays into that theme of, you know, the undead, where you can kind of essentially resurrect these like zombie units. Now, Terrors of the Mist also has a panic token, and the idea of being panicked. Essentially, what you can do is some of the abilities and some of the units, when you roll them, allow you to make another unit become panicked. Now, when another unit becomes panicked, essentially what you do is you place a panic token next to them. That looks like the white flag on the dice, and that's because if a unit is panicked that you're fighting against, you roll the die, and any retreat units, which normally would just make people fall back, are instead taken as hits. So it allows you to convert the flags of surrender you're rolling into hits, into damage against your enemy, and they have to take that. Now, the unit who has the panicked condition on them, they can spend 2 lore during their turn to remove the panic condition. Now we have the next army pack in this expansion, and this is the Heralds of the Dreadfall army pack, which is, of course, is part of the same faction. In the Heralds of the Dreadfall army pack, you also get 9 Remnants, 9 Death Knights, 6 Wraiths, 12 Skeleton Archers, and the big baddie from this army pack, 1 Barrow Worm. Now, this pack comes with the Blighted condition. Now, essentially, again, some of the dice you roll and some of the abilities and some of the unit cards will allow you to blight another unit, an opposing unit. If one of your enemies is blighted, essentially what that does is it reduces all of their movement to 1. Blighted units can only move 1 space, and further, they're considered weak. Now, normally, you're just weak if you only have kind of 1 figure left out of your unit, but this way, you could have all 3, theoretically. If you get a blight token, you're still considered weak. Now again, the player who has the Blighted condition during his turn, he can spend 2 lore tokens to get rid of the Blighted condition. Now this pack also has the graveyard terrain, but it also has plague lands. And plague lands are essentially, they kind of benefit the Undying player because if any enemy units move into the plague lands, they are considered weak. It weakens them. However, if an Undying faction unit moves in there, if they attack from there, they are not really considered weak. They still get the hits on the single sword. Now, in addition to all these things, each of these factions also come with their own unique scenario setups. There's some pretty interesting ones there as well. And then, of course, they each get their own lore deck. And you kind of course, are going to choose which lore deck you're going to play with. But there's opportunities to swap some of the cards out if you want, depending on if you're going to kind of mix the factions, which I recommend you do, because that's what I do with the other factions as well. You kind of mix the units in that you want. And that just, I don't know, it just makes for a more fun game rather than just sticking to one. But, of course, you've got to balance that against the strengths of your lore deck and how you're going to make that work for you. So that's cool. Some of the cards in the lore deck offer some fun and interesting things as well. So I got to tell you, this new faction, Wakura of the Undying, feels like a new faction. It doesn't play like the other factions, which is really cool. It offers some fun and interesting and unique ideas, and like I say, some of those lore cards that come out can be really powerful and fun. I really like them, but I really like some of the abilities on the unit cards themselves. There's just some really fun things they can do in the game. For instance, the Reanimates, they can recover 1 health whenever they roll a single sword. If you're playing the Banshee and you roll the Crown, you can force any unit that is adjacent to you to retreat 1 space. The Necromancers can influence other units when they roll a Crown to kind of help them move and attack, so it's almost like getting an extra movement and extra attack there. When the Death Knights roll a Crown, they have the Executioner ability, which means the target unit cannot resolve retreat effects. They must simply treat retreats like damage. The Barrow Worm is really cool because it's a flying unit, and any non-flying melee units, they have to roll 1 fewer dice when fighting against the Barrow Worm. Now also, too, it has Plague Breath ability, which can allow it to blight other units. The Wraiths have a pretty interesting ability. They can possess other units. Essentially, when you roll the Crown for the Wraiths, they can swap hexes with the target unit. And the target unit can't counterattack, they just are simply swapped. Like I say, there are some really, really cool lore cards in this deck as well. For instance, there's Vengeful Spirit. When one of your Wraith units is eliminated, then any unit that was adjacent to it can suffer 1 damage and become blighted. There's the Will of the Undying, which after you move, you act as though you would roll the Crown, even if you didn't, for unit abilities. There's Mists of the Dread. This costs 7 lore, but it's really cool. During that turn, the enemy rolled a maximum of 2 dice after modifiers when performing combat rolls. You can essentially limit your enemy to only rolling 2 dice when he's attacking you with that card. Deathmark is really cool. You play after that movement step. You choose an enemy unit. You add 2 dice to each combat roll from any unit that attacks the target unit that turn. And in addition, any damage that is caused cannot be ignored. You can summon Phantasm, and that's pretty cool because you can place Phantasm markers on the board, and if units move into these spaces, they automatically become panicked. And there are many, many more great lore cards from these 2 sets that really add that extra bite to the game. So I really, really enjoy these 2 army packs. I enjoy what this new faction brings to the game. Fun units, fun new cards, fun setups, just a lot of fun and new engaging rules, and again, critically, the faction plays very different from previous factions. Now, of course, if you don't play Battlelore, you're not going to start with this. You're going to start with the base set. Learn how to play it, though. It's an awesome game. If you like Battlelore, if you enjoy it, if it's a game you really get a kick out of, you're going to want to buy this new faction. It is really, really a lot of fun. So the recommendation for the discriminating gamer is, if you like that Battlelore 2nd Edition, buy these 2 new army packs. Thank you once again for joining us today on The Discriminating Gamer. As always, we ask you to please leave a comment for us on YouTube, on Board Game Geek, on our Facebook page, or on thediscriminatinggamer.com. We ask you to please like us on Facebook and subscribe to us on YouTube. We are The Discriminating Gamer. And kids, don't do drugs. Do board games.
Please somebody help me on my feet again. And I don't know where I'm going, and I don't know where I've been. Please somebody help me on the solid ground. It's a long time, and I've been dying. Once a year I wind up in the band.
One Japanese reserve must go to the Southwest Pacific Theater, down to Papua New Guinea.
Ooh, good shot.